Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation. From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm the show's producer, Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
It's about 5 below zero here in New York City, but the spring season has already begun on Broadway, and we've gathered a group of experts to talk about it.
And to give us a preview of the shows coming to Broadway in the spring, we are joined by 3 top theater journalists here in New York. Michael Musto writes the very famous Michael Musto La Dolce Vita column in
Just
the Village
had tuna
Voice.
fish. I have notes from 3 doctors. I might not make it to the end of the show.
The old Piven excuse comes back. We will get that. We will get to that in a minute. Our great friend Jesse Green, the arts writer for New York Magazine. Welcome back to Theater Talk.
Thanks.
And Patrick Pacheco, the host and commentator on New York 1 on stage. Welcome.
Thanks.
All right, to the Jeremy Piven point.
That's important, right.
Let's just tell everyone what's going on with that, because Jeremy Piven pulled out of Speed the Plow a month ago, claiming he had a bout of mercury poisoning. This is a story, Michael, that will not die. I mean, he was just the other week, he was on Good Morning America talking about mercury poisoning to, what's her name?
Diane Sawyer.
To Diane
And
Sawyer.
how did he make it onto that show? And how did he look so good at the Golden Globes? But look, if somebody says they're sick, I will buy it. More shady, I think, is the fact that while Norbert Leo Boots was subbing for Piven, there was a huge picture still outside the theater of Jeremy Piven, because he sells tickets.
Exactly.
Okay, they didn't take it down. They just took it down the other day, I saw, for William H. Macy.
Jesse, why do you think this story keeps going and going? I mean, I just got a call from Entertainment Tonight to comment on Jeremy Piven. It doesn't.
Well, that's totally inexplicable why they called you.
Thank you.
But the story itself, I think there's a general anxiety on Broadway right now about what is the place of Hollywood stars in the theater, if any. We've had an interesting season where some producers seem to be getting the formula right, finally. Some of these shows have paid off.
And indeed, we should say with Speed the Plow, they were 1 week from recoupment before Jeremy Piven came down with mercury poisoning.
And several of the other dramas that you might not expect to do well have done well, with very careful casting of people who actually can play the roles. That's helpful.
Or stay in them.
Well, Piven was
and
great.
stay in them.
Piven was great. Yeah.
Yes, that's my point. But we're negotiating this deal with Hollywood actors and how we should be using them in Broadway shows, and I think it's getting better. And I think the fact that that show was about to recoup and then he apparently blew it off is causing a lot of anger.
Yeah. The show has been recast now with William H. Macy, a good friend of David Mamet's. Do you think the show can survive at the box office with Macy? Is he the draw that Piven was?
I don't think he's the draw that Piven was, but I think if they were a week away from recouping, I don't think they're that far away from it. And the thing about Piven, too, is that he grew up in a Chicago theater family.
His father
this
was
is
close
nothing
friends
new.
with David Mamet.
Right. Yeah. This is nothing new to him in terms of the discipline of it. I think it comes at a bad time, or a dicey time in his career, where his career is really taking off with Entourage, and then this brings in all kinds of problems, and perhaps that played into it as
Michael,
well.
you're the expert on broken careers and showbiz. Does this hurt Jeremy Piven at all this talk about him, pulling out for these weird reasons of a play?
It does, because there's a lot of skepticism around it. And I actually heard from an LA casting source that he's so disliked in the business, even before this all happened, that they don't think he'll ever work again in LA after Entourage. If he comes back to New York, we're not throwing him any kind of parade either.
No.
So he could just play Ari forever.
And this guy is so spoiled. Even if he was sick with mercury poisoning, it's just, I'm not going to take care of myself. Apparently he went out a lot.
I'm more for the Patti LuPone school, where the other night in the middle of Rose's turn, she just screamed at somebody taking a picture. Went on stage, came back, and finished Rose's turn.
And keep it going. But I don't agree with you. I thought Jeremy Piven was looking kind of peaked at the Golden Globes, and I felt kind of sad for him.
He had just had sushi again.
That's right.
He never learns.
Remember, years ago we had Brian Dennehy on the show who said that they treat you in Hollywood like you're 4 years old, and that's very corrupting to the psyche, and clearly.
And he eats whatever he wants, and he looks great.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we have had this season, and are going to have in the coming season, a lot of people who
are susceptible to mercury poisoning.
No, quite the opposite. If anyone is indeed susceptible to mercury poisoning, people who are professionals do know how to act and do seem to know how to do stage performances 8 times a week, and perhaps carry a lot of these serious plays that are coming in at a time when people are worried about whether any show can make it.
For example, among these series plays with big stars, what are you most excited about?
Oh, excited about? Oh, I'm out. No. There's a lot of. We've got Hedda Gabler about to open with
Mary Louise Parker.
We have God of Carnage, which was just announced with James Gandolfini and Marcia Gay Harden and
Jeff
Daniels and 33 Variations with Jane Fonda.
Well, let's break them down for a minute. God of Carnage. It's a play by Yasmina Reza, who made a pile of money a few years ago with a play called Art. Do we know anything about it?
I know that Ray Fiennes played it in London, and it did very well in London. And it's a real stemwinder. I think it's about a kid that gets in a fight, right?
Kids at school, and these are the parents of the two fighters.
Right, and then they get involved into it. And I think somebody ends up getting choked, or they start getting into
it's Yasmina Reza land, though, isn't it? Sort of a upper middle class, elegant, Parisian, sophisticated.
Which is
people.
why James Gandolfini is.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. When you think of bourgeois Parisian types, do you think of James Gandolfini?
I think this season, because of the recession, which I just hate talking about, it's so boring and blasé, they're taking any star, especially with Jeremy Piven gone. Every one of these shows we mentioned has major stars. I mean, and Susan Sarandon and Jeffrey Rush are coming. I have a list and list of Joan Allen and Jeremy Irons. It's a season of star power. Either they're going to be very safe musical revivals or major Academy Award winning types who will sell tickets whether they're right for the part or not.
Well, that's interesting because we saw, of course, with Katie Holmes this past season.
Right.
That show did.
All My Sons, the Arthur
All
Miller
My Sons did turn a profit.
Yep.
And the clever thing about it was they gave her a part where she couldn't really ruin the play. Despite the fact that, as has been often mentioned on this very show,
she can't act.
So
she wore the costumes beautifully.
Yes. So I'm looking forward to more super big stars in small, undangerous roles in serious plays, like Miley Cyrus as a parlor maid in The Wild Duck.
But I think if you have a big star, it has to be a big star in the right vehicle. Right. Nobody wanted to see Kelsey Grammer in Macbeth. That was a total box office bust. And I think Angela Lansbury in Bly Spirit is going to draw a lot better than she drew for Deuce.
Yeah, does it sound like a better fit to you, Michael, Angela Lansbury and Noel Coward, than in the Terrence
Bly
McNally?
Spirit is about as safe as you can get. The 65 and over crowd is getting all ready and dolled up to see this one. This is a recession play. Let's drag it out. It entertained the British people after that war. So I'm amazed that Angela wants to even come back to Broadway after Deuce, which was a disgraceful vehicle for her and Marion Seldes, though they both rose above it with aplomb.
They acquitted themselves, yeah. Bly Spirit, does it have any currency anymore? I mean, it's one of Noel Coward's top drawer plays. Yeah.
Not all the choices are safe choices this season. No. I mean, we keep talking about the dull recession economy of Broadway, and it is terrible and all that, but another way to look at it is that with more theaters open, there's more room for smaller, risky things.
A very risky one, I think, and I saw it in Sydney, Australia. It's an Australian production. Is the Ionesco play Exit the King with Jeffrey Rush, whom I saw in Australia, and he was just brilliant. Susan Sarandon, I didn't see her. She's new to the production. But I mean, an Ionesco play in this market, is there people want to see it?
It has the potential to be a snob hit, but no, I don't think Ionesco draws the American audience as much as Noel Coward.
But might, and that's the thing that I'm interested in: how some producers are just figuring out how to get in, get out, just the right amount of time, make a buck.
Right.
Maybe not make millions, but make enough to keep going, and that's what we need. We need more of that.
That's true. We have this formula now, Michael, of limited run plays. 16 weeks, 2 big stars. Everybody shares in the profits.
Make a killing and run. Yeah.
Not even a killing, but at least don't get killed.
Yeah. Well, Ionesco, I think, is so passé at this point. It's not even absurdist. It's just kind of like, oh, that's nice. They're turning chairs upside down. But this particular play, Exit the King, is about a megalomaniacal leader. We already have Will Ferrell as George W. Bush. This is redundant. But it's part of a scheme to bring back absurdism because Nathan Lane, two other big stars,
Bill Irwin
are appearing in Waiting for Godot. They're playing 2 homeless people. Unfortunately, the audience is also homeless.
But if you're talking about a market for snob hits, it's a crowded market.
It is.
I mean, we haven't even mentioned Mary Stewart, which is probably the snob appeal show.
Which is basically a female Frost Nixon.
The Schiller play, directed by Philip Deloitte, and it stars Janet McTeer, who won a Tony Award for Hedda Gabler several years ago, and Harriet Walter, who's a wonderful...
For Doll's House.
Yes. All right, the question then, Patrick, is the general feeling on Broadway has been every season you can have one snob hit. You can have the History Boys, and you can make a lot of money on it. 6 snob hits?
No.
Does the market support them?
No, I think that's what's truer in this kind of economy than ever, is that you're going to become much more competitive for that ticket. People that generally would see 3 plays a season will see 1. And I think that's going to be across the board. That's going to affect the big musicals as well. They're going to see Billy Elliot and maybe not see Shrek.
So does the thing with the play put a bigger onus on the power of Ben Brantley to pick what will be the snob
drama
hit?
critic for the New York Times.
Yeah, well, I think that's another question altogether, because I think you are seeing a diminishment of critical power because of the webs and word of mouth, and again the fact that tickets are expensive and people are going to be watching their pocketbooks. They're going to go a lot more by word of mouth and what their neighbors say and what they read on the blogs and the other ways that they assess whether they're going to go to something or not.
Just a contrarian point. I'm not sure that you're wrong, as I usually am.
It's a safe bet.
I just wonder, as a devil's advocate, if it isn't possible that although musicals will face the problem that you've raised, I'm not sure that it follows for these 16-week plays. Yes, you do need to get an audience, but I think it's possible that more than one can make it. More than one did in the previous season, where we didn't have as bad an economy. But still, I think it may be, and this is Pollyanna-ish, that people in this sort of time may be looking to get something from a drama that they can't get in any other way.
A cheap seat. Michael, one theory about why we have all these plays coming in is that producers in this difficult economic time don't want to risk $12, $13, $14, $15 million on a big musical, so do the play for $2 million, $3 million. And also, the tourist audience is really no longer here, so you got to bring the New Yorkers back to the theater, and they generally want more serious fare than, tourists from Asia.
That's all true, and some of these Oscar winners are not going to make themselves available for more than 16 weeks. They actually do have movies. This is something they do in between movies for prestige. And the tourists are going to see Susan Sarandon, Jeffrey Rush, Jane Fonda. I want to see it. They don't care what it's about. If you really examine what some of these plays are about, they're all hoity-toity subject matter. Like Jane Fonda plays a musicologist investigating Beethoven. Beethoven appears to her in person. It happens all the time.
Yeah, let's sell that play with a non-name in it and see how far it goes.
And Impressionism is about a photojournalist and a gallery owner. I mean, let's do a show again about an everyday drag queen. People I know.
It's sort of like December in movies, but the whole season.
Yeah.
Everything's beginning to feel like an Ang Lee movie on Broadway, these kind of things. All right, well, moving on, though, from plays, too, there are some big musicals coming. As we tape this show in New York, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding the revival of Hair that is coming from the Public Theater. It was a hit for the public in Central Park last summer, where the tickets were free.
Right.
They've had a lot of trouble raising the financing. Is it your sense that they're going to be able to pull Hair together? And will it work when people have to pay for their ticket to see it?
Yes, I think it will. Again, it depends on the competition. You also have West Side Story coming in, and Guys and Dolls in terms of those revivals that are coming in. But yeah, I think Hair. The time seems to me ripe for Hair. I think it did very well in the park in terms of generating a lot of buzz and a lot of excitement. And yes, I think they will get their money together. Jeffrey Richards has come into it, and he's got a great
producer.
He's got a track record.
Michael, you're that side of that generation of Hair. Does it hold
Thank you. I'm glad you didn't say no, Nanette.
I mean, doesn't Hair that touchy-feely, lovey-beady sort of thing?
No, it's a wonderful show. I loved it in the park. I hope Jeffrey Richards is bringing all the dirt and the mud into the theater to make it authentic. The great thing is Jonathan Groff is fantastic.
Yes,
he's not in anymore?
Yeah, well, that's a problem.
Oh, well, the girl who sang Aquarius is... she's not in anymore? Well,
Gavin.
Look, it's an anti-war show, and it's a great score. It's not revived a lot. So it's not another Guys and Dolls, which we're going to come to.
Right. We will, yeah.
But the Groff is a really big loss. I mean, he gave a very touching performance.
Jonathan Groff, who was wonderful.
Well, now we have Gavin Creel from Throw Them Out of Miller.
Right.
But not the same.
We should just say Jonathan Groff was wonderful in Spring Awakening on Broadway. We really came to everyone's attention. The reason these people have left the show, though, is because, as agents will tell you, they're offering them scale. They don't want to pay a decent salary for these kids to be in the shows, and they're turning them down.
That's what Jeremy Piven should have said.
Yeah, he wasn't getting scale.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't. Do you think Hair is currency?
Well, I could use some. Is that what you're talking about? Is this some kind of strange...
How did Jeffrey raise the currency?
I have to say, I enjoyed the production in the park. I do find it a little dated, personally. I think the production's lovely, and I love hearing the music, but I'm not sure, and I think one of the great things was the atmosphere
Yeah, I agree.
and the open air and the people getting up on the stage afterward and dancing. That's not going to happen in the Walter Kerr or wherever it's...
Oh, I think it will. Don't you?
How are they going to get up there? And the lawsuits. I mean, it's just...
It's not going to happen. It's
Oh,
not going to happen.
oh, sure it'll happen. You mean dancing at the end on
They're
the
not
stage of the
going to,
Walter Kerr?
producers
With the audience?
Producers and theater owners are
absolutely,
not
of
going to
course.
allow the audience to get on stage. The liability is too great. It's not going to happen.
I think they're going to direct you right to the sidewalk for your personal dancing.
Return your infrared hearing system and then out that way. All right, West Side Story, Michael, got pretty good reviews out of town in Washington, D.C. Arthur Lawrence, 91 years old, God love him,
bless him.
who wrote it, he's directing it, and it's bilingual.
It is? I thought he was gay.
Lingual.
Oh, he is determined to redo every show of his before he dies
Hallelujah,
and put the
baby.
ultimate stamp on it. Yeah, what? You know. But the bilingual thing, I look forward to seeing it. I got the leap of intellectualism that they were supposed to be Spanish. You know, without them actually singing and talking. I got the fact that they're not really singing and dancing too. You know, that. Am I too literal-minded? I mean, could it have done without the Spanish stuff?
Probably.
Well, there's nothing wrong with experimenting with the classic, and he's the one to do
classic,
it.
yeah.
You know, and reports out of Washington have been pretty good so far, and the translation is apparently what I've heard of it is very good. It was done by Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Who
you'll get
created
In the Heights.
In the Heights, yeah.
You'll get the Latino audience. I mean, the Latino audience that's absolutely mi gente. The Latino audience that's keeping.
See, I don't
in
even
the
know what
Heights.
that means now. I'm going to be lost. Totally lost during this show. Do they have subtitles?
They did. They had surtitles in Washington, but they took them out. Do you think there is a Latino audience there for Broadway shows?
Absolutely. There certainly was one for, or is one for In the Heights.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
they're actually selling to the Latino audience very, very well. And I think Latino audiences will absolutely go to West Side Story.
Interesting. Let's just talk a little bit about Arthur Lawrence, because he is a legend on Broadway, and he's really the last. We know he can be mean, but we do love him on this show. What do you think it is that drives him at 91 to having just direct Gypsy and now West Side Story?
The same thing that drove him all his life. Why should it be different? He's healthy.
He's skiing in Switzerland
He's
as
off
we
with
speak.
Hal Prince for 2 weeks of skiing, unreachable, as I've tried.
Yes, so did I. Yeah.
No, that's kind of inspiring, don't you think? I mean, why should there be any diminution in his ego? For instance, you know, he wants to stake a claim now, just like he did 50 years ago.
He's famously mean, though, in the business, though, isn't he, Michael?
That's what's.
Oh. Well, the original West Side Story was like the Mean Brigade of like Jerome Robbins, Arthur Lawrence, Leonard Bernstein. It's like the Third Reich. Sondheim was the nice one.
But I mean, Arthur's famous for his, you know, tough talk and his vicious tongue. And
Well, he told Bernadette Peters a thing or two when she did Gypsy.
I love him. I mean, you like him, but don't you, Arthur? Patrick? He's great fun.
But I think that the meanness is what kind of keeps him alive. I think that's what
It works for me.
I've always found him so charming. Now,
I rest my case, Michael.
now, do we need another revival of Guys and Dolls? Is Des Mackinac
With
gonna-
Oliver Platt.
Yeah, and Des Mackinac directing.
That sounds so your grandmother's theater, I'm afraid. So boring. Guys and Dolls.
It's
doesn't
always
it?
been a hit, though, right? Isn't it revived like every 12 years, Jesse?
Next to Gypsy, it's the most revived.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Well, it's a
comes along
perfect
all the
show.
time.
It's just a
is a
gorgeous,
great
wonderful show with great characters. But there was the ultimate production of it, not the all-black version, which was okay in the 70s. Remember that?
Yeah.
With
Yeah,
Robert
I
Guillaume.
remember.
But the Faith Prince, Nathan Lane version, was it the 80s or the 90s? It's all a blur.
Yeah,
It is
which
a blur. It was
when
the
Nathan
early
Lane
90s.
became a
I
big
think it was
star out of that.
94 or
Well,
something.
It was
like that.
spectacularly well cast and could not have been improved upon.
Yeah, I don't know why they keep bringing it back, but a lot of things that we're talking about are going to be a surprise. The things that we think are going to be a hit are just going to be
Well, that's the way the
set
game always
also
works.
ends, and something may just pop out. Maybe this will be a groundbreaking role for Oliver Platt.
And now we still have the old commercial, let's make the musical based on the movie to deal with. We've had a whole bunch of those all these past few years, but we've got maybe one left we have to get through, 9 to 5. Any excitement being generated by that?
Hey, let's not forget a lot of those worked. A lot of those musicals made from movies did fine, and some of them were quite good as well. 9 to 5, I saw it a year and a half ago in workship. It was a lot of fun. I don't know what's happened to it since then. Did you see it in LA?
You saw it in
I
Los
did.
Angeles. And
I did see it.
What's
in
your
LA.
verdict?
I think it's perfectly fine. I think it's it's well directed. It's very well cast. It features a terrific performance.
By Dolly Parton?
Allison Janney.
Only when the
Allison
set
Janney.
breaks.
Right, that's right. That's right.
Allison Janney again in this economic climate, competing for the dollars. It may have a tough time, but it's a good workmanlike project.
Do you workmanlike? That's inspiring. That makes you want to go see it, right, Michael?
I wish Dolly was in it.
Or
I mean,
woman
that
was.
would just certify it
That
as a
would be
smash.
something,
They
yeah.
should make the set break every night, so she'd have to come out and entertain the audience. I just hope we're not going to lead up to Tootsie the musical. Are they going to make a musical out of every movie ever
I
made?
think that's
Yes.
the
Yes,
plan.
yes.
Actually, Tootsie the musical sounds good.
Yes, they will. They will.
Why
They will.
not?
They will. Well, I mean, they
As
will
long as it
until
works.
things really don't work.
Well, there is one totally original musical on Broadway this season, and I see everyone talking about it.
Story of my life.
The story of my life.
All right, Addie, what is it?
See? Even our preeminent theater journalist doesn't know what we're talking
can't.
about.
I don't even know what it is.
I
What
looked
is
it up. It's with Malcolm Getz and Will Chase, and the description is it's a story of relationships with people, which is good to know. It's not a dog show.
It's not
It's not a
Equus.
Jennifer
It's not-
Aniston movie.
It's not Equus, is what
And
they're
it's
telling me.
directed
It's the
by
ultimate
Richard Maltby,
recession
yeah.
musical.
Yeah.
Yeah, Richard Maltby directed. It's a minimal show. I think only 2 actors.
Only 2
New
actors.
songwriters. First time. That scares me. Glory days. And
Close to
Oh,
one
but there were
night.
4 actors in that. This is totally different.
okay, it's a cost cutter.
And there's another new musical at Lincoln Center, Happiness, with lyrics by John Weidman, and the Grey Gardens team have written it.
Yeah.
What do we know about that?
Just that it's been in workshop, and it sounds promising.
It's
That's
about
not
New
based on the Todd
Yorkers
Solondz
on a
movie.
subway.
And it's not. Yeah, it's not based on the Todd Solondz movie. What's it about? John?
New Yorkers on a subway in unusual circumstances. I don't know. I assume
when
it's
the
a
Metro
blackout.
card goes up to $3. It's very dramatic.
So you're right, Patrick. It's all going to be a surprise. We just don't know.
What are,
It always is.
what are the news stories we're going to be writing about? We just have a few minutes left. I mean, are we still going to be harping on the economy? Are we going to be watching every show to see if it can survive in this economic climate? Is that,
Absolutely.
That's driving the stories of the theater.
Yes, because really the problem isn't so much this spring. Many of the houses have filled up from
Yep.
the shows that closed. There's only 5 left unbooked, and many of them are spoken for, not yet signed. It's really what this is all going to say for the fall. That's when I think everybody feels concerned it's going to collapse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the
absolutely.
theater in general, where they're taking no risks,
I disagree
nurturing
with
very
that.
few new artists,
Yeah,
and
I-
it's just it just seems to me to be
Why do you disagree with that?
yeah.
Well, I think they're not taking risks with the leading players on Broadway dramas because they
You
simply
can't. Yeah, it's ridiculous to do.
But there weren't many years in the history of the theater where you could. I'm sure in ancient Rome, Susan Sarandon had to be called in if they wanted to do something.
I mean that.
She's not that old.
I mean risk with new writers.
But Broadway isn't really
For new
it.
writers,
yeah.
that's
And if you
right.
look off Broadway, I think some of the off-Broadway theaters are taking up the slack. There's a lot of excitement off Broadway.
We are faced with, I think, quite an interesting spring season in that we talked about one movie to stage show, 9 to 5. In years past, we would talk about 7 or 8 of them that were coming. Now we're talking about Ionesco. I know not your favorite, but, you know, cut above Legally Blonde in many people's estimation.
And Schiller.
And we've got Schiller coming.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with serious works, classics, being done on Broadway, and it hasn't happened that much in the last few years.
We have new plays off Broadway, sorry,
No, go ahead.
Patrick, by Chris Durang, Craig Lucas, Lynn Nottage, Tracy Scott Wilson. I mean, a lot of exciting stuff that maybe there was a golden age sometime when playwrights like that would be on Broadway. I was never there. And at least New Yorkers will get to see them.
And maybe off-Broadway will get more because of the tickets are cheaper.
Tickets are cheaper.
And you might see a play like Becky Shaw by
Yeah,
Gina
yeah.
Gianfrido. I don't know how to
Second stage, yeah.
Yeah, a new female playwright possibly transferring, and you've got Cripple of Inishman as well, possibly. So you've got a lot of the economic situation looks grim because we're coming off of such a boom time. I mean, I remember the early '80s when half of the theaters were dark. You know, we're not facing that,
And we're
by
being
any
sold
means.
off.
And being sold off. You know,
Yeah.
it was always known as the fabulous invalid. We just haven't been using that term. So
But Michael, with
often
all these
the past
serious classic plays, what's a good old show queen to do?
years. Are you talking about yourself, Michael, given that scarf?
Just the star power alone is going to dazzle the media. I mean, people are going to be just in rapture over Jane Fonda, even if it isn't any good. Look at Katie Holmes and the excitement that she brought by not being that good. Jane Fonda hasn't been on Broadway in 46 years. We have so many stars. Matthew Broderick is coming, and The Philanthropist. What is that? I don't know, but he's off in his story.
It's a take on
He's
Moriarty.
erratic. I mean, you have the producers, then you have Taller Than a Dwarf. You never know what you get with him. But
It's true, it's true.
It's star upon star this year, and I think the press will build up a lot of glamour and excitement
And
around
is there
that.
any sense, any possibility of bad behaving stars, any sort sort of Jeremy Piven kind
Well,
of
all the
feats
new
going on?
contracts do include a non-sushi clause.
So we've come full circle.
We should just say, Jeremy Piven, we hope you're feeling better.
Yes, feel better.
All right, Patrick Pacheco.
That was so sincere.
Patrick Pacheco from New York One on Stage, Michael Musto from the Village Voice, and Jesse Green from New York Magazine.
Congratulations on the gypsy robe, by the way.
Coat of many colors, a scarf of many colors.
Jeremy Piven was supposed to be on this show.
He was wearing the scarf. He was going to wear the
So I
We're
have
getting
that
his
on.
leftovers.
That's true. Yeah, Jeremy Piven, we should say to Jeremy, if you're watching, you blew us off the last time, but open
I
invitation.
feel like Norbert Leo Booth subbing for him.
But,
Whatever.
all
I feel
right,
like a
gentlemen,
sub.
good night and thank you.
I see it happen time and time again, not just with marginal performers, but with stars. They go to Hollywood, they make a lot of money, and they get offered a lot of money, and that's what they do.